Oh, hi, Mary. This is Patti. I'm going to talk to you about krill and the relationship between krill and sea ice. This is a beautiful picture from National Geographic, and if you look very closely, you can see these adult krill underneath the ice, and perhaps you can notice their very green digestive glands in these krill. Krill are probably a little bit bigger than you may have imagined. They're almost as big as your little finger. They grow up to about 60 millimeters in length. They can weigh up to about 2 grams. And you can see this digestive gland here and the little stomach in front of the digestive gland. So they filter very small particles out of the water column. These particles are phytoplankton usually, and they use these filtering apparatus, the filtering basket, to filter these particles for their food. This is a close-up of this filtering basket. You can see the very fine setae, and down on the bottom here is a scanning electron micrograph, and the little pink dot is about 2 microns. So in the winter, they use this structure also as kind of a rake-like apparatus. You see the little curly bits there. They can rake ice algae out from underneath the ice. And in the summer, mainly, they use this filtering basket to filter the water from the water column. Krill are a very important component of the Antarctic marine ecosystem. They're the food source for all the animals that you think about living in Antarctica, such as these little Adelie penguins. This photo is taken off Mawson Station in Antarctica. They're also the major food source for seals and whales, baleen whale. So this is a minke whale popping out of an ice hole very close to where we were working, very spectacular. So some of these baleen whales, the great whales, they can feed up to about 1/4 of a ton of krill, up to 4 times a day. So they take a lot of krill out of the Southern Ocean. This map you've seen by various other presenters just show you the sea ice extent in the winter compared to the summer. So in February here we have sea ice, about 4 million square kilometres of sea ice. In the winter there's 20 million square kilometres. So this is virtually doubling the size of the Antarctic continent. And this is very important habitat for krill in the winter, living underneath this ice. So this is a picture underneath the ice, and the very green here are diatoms or algae growing underneath the ice. So these algae are entrained into the sea ice in the autumn, and they're food for krill and other organisms during the winter, and then they're released from the sea ice when the sea ice melts and they initiate the spring bloom. This is an ice core. It's about 1 metre thick ice, and this is the very bottom part of the ice core at the water-ice interface. And you see this green brown bottom bit is made up of the algae. This beautiful diatom here is a species called Corythrum. It's actually made up of silica, and you can see all the glass spines there. It doesn't look very appetizing, but krill love these kinds of diatoms and depend on them during the winter. These gorgeous creatures are microscopic zooplankton. These photos are actually taken from the World Ocean Tara expedition, but some of these same species, or closely related ones, are found living in the Antarctic sea ice in the winter. And some of them can be a food source for Antarctic krill. If you look closely, you can see larval fish and some echinoderms, larval echinoderms, copepods, jellyfish, and polychaete worms, gastropods. So there's representatives from almost every phyla in the zooplankton. Antarctic krill undergo quite a complex life cycle. It's made up of 4 phases. The adult female krill will spawn the eggs in the summer, and these eggs sink into very deep ocean, down to about 2 to 3 kilometers. The eggs then hatch and start ascending to the surface, and they need to find food within a couple of days to survive. By winter, they have metamorphosed into this fusilia stage. This stage, they have very little storage lipid, so they depend on a food source in the ice in the winter. The adults, on the other hand, have a lot of lipid reserves and can last practically the whole winter without much food. So we all know the Arctic sea ice has dramatically decreased. Well, so too has the sea ice in Antarctica, particularly around the Antarctic Peninsula region. Climate models actually predict an average decrease of 24% in sea ice extent and about 35% in ice volume by about 2100. This is models. Antarctic sea ice extent has seen a slight increase over the last 30 years. However, we've seen a dramatic decrease in the last couple of years. So getting to Antarctica is logistically quite difficult in the winter, as you can imagine. But we've undertaken 2 expeditions over the last 20 years in the winter. This is the Aurora Australis, actually beset in about 8 meters of sea ice. And if you look very carefully, you can see many scientists out on the ice there with a bit too much time on our hands. So collecting krill underneath the ice in the winter is quite challenging. This is a ring net being deployed off the trawl deck on the Aurora Australis. And here we have a team with dip nets fishing for krill through an ice hole. So we study many different aspects of krill. We conduct live experiments in aquaria and analyze some of their biochemical composition to assess their condition and see what they've been eating. So this is poor little krill which have been crushed up in a sep funnel. You can see this beautiful pink oil, that's astaxanthin. It's a carotenoid pigment. So the amount of lipid in krill can change with their size, their sex and their season. We look at the lipid classes in krill, levels of storage lipid. Triacylglycerol, for example, is a storage lipid. We look at the fatty acid profiles, and they can tell us a lot about an animal, their diet, and where and what they have been eating. And so this dear little creature is very special. It's shouldering the whole Antarctic ecosystem. The winter sea ice habitat is changing, and we're trying to assess how these changes will affect krill and the animals that depend on krill. So in closing, I just have a few acknowledgements, and I also have some footage of krill taken by Fred Olivia and the ABC, which I'd like to show you.